All right, today on the show, I have the science and the soul of breathwork, the boys who are taking something that's quite a nebulous health foundation that everyone should have a good grasp on, putting a very clear, systematic way to approach, assess, program, and really wrap your head around something that can be something that is difficult, but also so basic to understand. I'd love to welcome Alex Butchies and Lino and Holler to the show. Boys, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's I was reflecting when I knew I was going to jump on the show today around where my journey started with breathwork. And correct me if I'm wrong, it came back to the art of the breath workshop I went to with yourself, Alex, and Brian McKenzie, the originator, CrossFit Endurance, Rob Wilson, the boys who kind of disseminated this model. I was so interested. We were passionate about becoming better clinicians, being faced with problems with the people that we couldn't help, and then trying to find a way to build our toolbox to help more people. I was interested. I've dabbled with it. I've done some stuff, but you quite literally took the ball and ran with it, mate. You've been going deep. It's so impressive to see how you've changed as a human clinician, but also how I feel like breathwork's unlocked a secret power within you. So why the breath, brother? Like, what is it about the breathwork that got you so excited?
That first, one-day course we did, the Art of Breath course with now what is Shift Adapt, was profoundly eye-opening. And for me, it's because I had that really high-level sporting background as a kid, but I was never the fittest guy in the fitness testing. I was always a mouth breather. I'd gas out too hard. And I had the skills, but I definitely felt like that was a lacking component. And the most beautiful thing about that course that we did was I could have taught it the next day because there was nothing fundamentally new that we'd learned given our backgrounds, master's degrees in, physiology, exercise scientists, exercise physiologists. The analogy I used since then was that they just connected all these dots that I'd already known around, lung mechanics, respiration, CO2, all these different things. And when they connected that beautiful picture, it just sparked something in me. And we were working with different cohorts of people. And I first and foremost saw the clinical benefits to the veterans that I was working with. You had the performance side, which you're already kind of heading down. And I had just landed in this chronic and complex PTSD, stress, anxiety space. And I saw the gap that was missing there with regards to nervous system regulation. And then I just spent the next, 5 or 6 years playing with it for myself for performance, and then applying it to my clients in that what would be considered the mental health umbrella in terms of helping these veterans sleep better, not get in road rage incidents, just regulate themselves. And the effects from these old blokes, generally speaking, who are the hardest to spin, once they could feel it, it's really easy once that buy-in's established. And once I saw how profound it was for blood pressure, sleep, stress, jiu-jitsu, running, you name it, I was just like, everyone needs to learn this. But learning it, like you alluded to, breath work, breathing exercises, they're so simple on the surface, but the minute you scratch and go a little deeper, it's the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole.
Beautiful, man. Like, you dance between all the different populations, and it sounds like breath is for everyone, quite literally. And I strongly believe that, there's two foundational movements as humans we need to survive, and that is breathing and, gait patterns. Everything else is really optional. And I feel like if there's a level of dysfunction in either of those two systems, it ripples out into every system within the body. And our reductionistic way of Western medicine, a way we just like to look at breath in isolation, or a knee injury. I've got a meniscus injury, and people just get obsessed with the knee, and they forget that the knee's attached to a human, an endocrine system, like a chemo system, all these systems.
Your hip and your ankle.
Quite literally everything. So it's just eye-opening, and I just every time I get to hang out with you and experience what the new tools or the new things you've discovered with it, it's made me appreciate it even more. Over to Leo, man, I haven't had the pleasure of knowing you. Obviously, Alex speaks very highly of you, so it's awesome to have you in here today. and while we're doing the mic check, I can understand the charisma just from the voice alone, why people stop and listen. But mate, how did you dive into this world that is to breathwork?
I think when you were asking those questions that Alex was sharing, I was thinking about, you know, how I stumbled across it. And I think breathwork activations is where I started. And then I guess trauma release work is where I ended up. And I'm finding more and more, it's like I'm finding myself back in the middle. Like now, nervous system regulation means everything to me, right? Personally and professionally, like these two things go hand in hand. So yeah, it was through breathwork activations, just like personally for myself. And then eventually I'd come across it in like the bigger like release stuff. But the longer my relationship with breathwork is going, it's like finding me back in the middle here where regulation is.
So when you say in the middle, do you quite literally mean trying to find, like, you know, if you're too wound up, you're at one end of the spectrum. If you're not amped up enough, you can be at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
When you say in the middle, what do you mean by that?
I got really sick in June and I had this really mad chest infection and sinus infection. And I was on antibiotics for about like 3 weeks. Over that 3 weeks, I'd lost about 10 kilos. And I spent most of my time sleeping throughout that whole month. I think what I found was as I'd lost that weight and because I'd slept for so long, when I finally got up and started moving again, my body was aching. Like I was crawling out of bed with like chronic back pain. Then I was going to the chiro and he sort of was like digging into some spots. He's like, what is this? Just breathe into it. And I just sort of felt I had an idea of what it was. And the way I look at anything, if it's not effective, then it just doesn't work. So there was something about the way that I lived, the way that I worked, that was impacting the way that my body was feeling. And I was like, I think I'm burnt out. I think my body, it's done what it needed to do, but it's just not willing to carry on living and working the way that I was. And I was like, okay, so my nervous system's clearly stretched. What am I carrying that's not mine? And I'm like, everything. And I'm just like, all right, if it doesn't support my nervous system, personally or professionally, it's out. That's literally where I'm at now.
It's a burden to be, when you're the provider and you are a leader in a space, well, they say heavy is the crown you bear. Like it's when you've got a lot of responsibilities, it can be, quite literally push you to the point of burnout. So interesting that you found the nervous system as such an integral piece of this. You know, it is everything and it is nothing, and it's intertwined to everything. Like the last guy we had on the show, Victor Popov, was literally talking about this as well. And I think he comes from a lens of elite performance because that's the space that he works in. But the dysfunction in the system still manifests in the same way, an inability to perform at your best, an inability to cope with what once was probably pretty reasonable life load, training load, racing load, pressure from these external sources. So it sounds like we've got, the psychological component that breathwork is so good to modulate the nervous system. You spoke to jiu-jitsu and league and some other sports there. What are the other elements that you find breathwork really effective for outside of the psychological and nervous system?
I think being able to manage your breathing rate and depth and have that match your desired outcome and output is the magical balance that kind of gets you into a flow state, and that's performance, right? So you perform your best in a flow state, and in the textbook for the guys that do the certified breathwork coaching course, we've got a whole section on flow state, and it was initially only thought to be really accessible to scientists, artists, and athletes. However, the literature is now coming out that we can access it at work. It's more commonly accessed in like more mundane, everyday things. And when it comes to a flow state, it's just the ultimate level of being present. So when you look at the data and the science on a flow state, you need to lose track of time. The skill challenge match needs to be balanced where it's not too hard and not too difficult. And it's complete immersion in what it is you are doing. And I feel that when it comes to performance, if you can understand where your breath needs to be to get you as close as possible dancing around that Goldilocks, of a flow state, that's the performance and the physical benefit that comes from literally breaths per minute, volume of breath. That alignment is what I think is the fundamental piece for athletes and high performers and anyone who wants to just be better at being present, focused, and in flow. That's that key point for me. And that jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts, why I like working with and doing that, is because you can't think about anything else when you're doing those things. And that doesn't mean you're automatically in a flow state. It also can send you off the edge and you can make really poor choices and really injure yourself if you're over aroused, let's say. And being able to regulate your breath in a combat sport situation is by far like the highest measuring stick to me, because in endurance sports or gym-based sports or CrossFit, for example, or high rocks, any of those kinds of things, you're competing against yourself, the clock, and the machinery around you, but the weights don't fight back. The guy swimming next to you doesn't try to hold you underwater. The person on the bike hopefully isn't trying to run you off the road. And
some short course athletes might argue with that, mate.
There's definitely some nudging and shoving, but
someone's not rear naked choking you.
It's real different if someone's trying to break your limbs or choke you unconscious. And again, that I don't do striking sports, but those guys, to me, I have the utmost respect for them, because the ability for things to change dramatically in those more in contact sports like striking sports, that's that next level again of speed, reaction time, flow state, and the importance of being where you need to be.
With the flow state, like what you were talking about, I was just trying to think back to there's a big wave that you're in and you just have to dial, otherwise you get smoked. Or we were talking about trail running before we started recording, and the process of being more present makes you probably hit a bit more of that flow state. For people listening, they're probably like going, yeah, you had that moment and then you try and search it and you just sometimes don't hit it again. And potentially the elite performers are those guys who can tap into it. What are some ways that someone can elicit that flow state? Or is there something like pre-training? Is it pre-performance? Is there anything that someone listening wants to try and achieve that more easily?
I think where you get the most bang for your buck is through everyday practice, through normal things. Driving in your car, being at work behind your laptop, right? Just doing LSD, because that's going to give you a really solid baseline.
Not acid.
For the listeners,
not acid.
LSD.
Yeah. LSD. So it's these little white paper things. No. So light, soft, deep breathing.
Beautiful.
And what it allows us to do, allows us to tap into our parasympathetic nervous system and allow us to, have a really great baseline. But breathing is something we do all day, every day, from the moment you're born to the moment you die. So you have so much opportunity to do it. You have so much opportunity to train it. As opposed to the gym, I just did a retreat over the weekend, and one of the requests was, I thought that we might do more training. I'm like, it's Sunday. You've done all your training, right? There's only so much training we can do before it's no longer beneficial to you. So, but with breathing, you could practice that when you're in the kitchen, when you're in the car. So that's the first thing I would recommend, so that when you go to actually apply breath work, to be able to try and practice being able to tap into those other states, I think you're going to be much more receptive, because you're not just going from a complete cold start, this thing that you do once a week and going to church, and now I'm all of a sudden supposed to switch on. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So the repeated practice, so this LSD, light or long, slow, deep, did you say?
Light, soft, deep.
Light, soft, deep is something you can be practicing all the time. I want to go into some more strategies, but do you find sometimes the pushback is, I'm already breathing all day, why do I need to?
That's absolutely.
Well, there's a difference between breathing and effective, efficient breathing. Complete different. This happens all the time. How often, the amount of workshops and retreats I've done, or workshops specifically, and you speak about breath work, and it's usually the older gentlemen, and they're just I breathe all the time. I'm just yeah, look, when we lay down to breathe, you're going to be saying something a little bit different. Yeah.
What are some signs then people aren't doing it effectively? Or are there 5 or something you'd be yeah, if you're ticking these boxes, this is probably something you should be listening to right now?
I'll say 2 things that Alex always says Don't sit like a croissant and don't breathe like a French bulldog. If you look like that, you sound like that. Yeah, you sound like that. You're off.
Oh, care to elaborate on those two, brother?
So look, whenever we do any seated breathwork practice, I always make sure that people are seated comfortable enough for their spine to be somewhat straight. You don't want to have the spine of a croissant or sitting like a prawn, because then our diaphragm's not going to be able to move our ribs in the appropriate way, given that, flexed spine. And then breathing like a French bulldog, like just through your mouth, restricted throat, and it's probably nasal breathing. Like if you can't breathe through your nose when you go for a brisk walk, there's your biggest red flag. And you might be really fit, you might be really strong, all those different things. But again, sip your lips, walk fast for 10 minutes. What happens? Do the alarm bells start ringing? Do you get intense breathlessness? And then that ties into that underlying biochemistry and pH and CO2 and how reactive our body becomes. People are jumping on the mouth taping thing at the moment. There's so many different brands. Everyone loves it. All the influencers are doing their videos, this changed my life. If you can't walk for 10 plus minutes fast without opening your mouth, don't tape your mouth to go to sleep, right? Because we need to be able to do it at a bit higher than what we're asking it to do. Otherwise, your body, it could be more of a stress than a help. And then, you try it, you don't sleep better, it doesn't work. And you fall into that category of, I tried some kind of breathwork intervention that made things worse. Therefore, breathwork as a whole gets put into the basket of doesn't work and it's nonsense, right? So that's the deeply frustrating thing that I've run into over the time, is that there are these gimmicky things that have a time and a place, and I love them. When I met my fiance, I used to tape my mouth when I go to bed. She thought I was insane, but that was like 5 years ago.
Horrible for yourself.
She thought I was nuts.
Horrible for yourself.
She's like, I've just fallen in love with this guy that has cold showers and tapes his mouth shut. And she's like, this dude's nuts. And it was like the start of COVID, right?
Dude,
so people weren't doing
blue
it.
light blockers on and let's go. It's a good look.
It was just like, I didn't get that far. It's okay. I have the night shift on the screens. But I guess to come back to the question, if you can't breathe through your nose at rest, especially at walk, that's a problem. If when you do start to do things harder and you start to sound like a French bulldog, that is a red flag. We don't want to have that. And I guess composure with your breathing is the most important thing you want to eventually build towards. And then you have to find that composure sitting with a straight back, and before you can find it, walking briskly, before you can find it running, before you can find it in a workout or rolling or on your transitions. For example, in a triathlon race, like you don't want to mess up that part. And if your mind's racing and you're all over the shop and you mess up those in-between moments, that's another really good place where practicing your breathing as you're coming into those transition phases can be really helpful in keeping you efficient and smooth in the parts that you may not think so much about.
I think that paying attention just to how you breathe as a whole, don't write that off. Like through just everyday things.
Awareness is the first
for those
gateway.
For those that are listening.
It's so funny. Like sometimes I feel like people just buying an Oura Ring or a Whoop improves their sleep because it built awareness around it. So I have the same pushback, and I kind of said that laughingly around people feel like, they breathe all the time. So why do they need to be focusing on it? It's like, you probably drive your car every day as well. It doesn't mean you're a Formula One racing car driver. Like there's levels to this, and building awareness around how you're doing something. It sounds like probably not practicing the skill in a super high stress environment to start with. Like, you said walking, practice nasal breathing. I know they used to use the gears of breathing. I don't know if that's still the framework you use around regulation and control as intensity increases, because you said something that's super valuable. I feel like for the listener who maybe doesn't have a basis in breathwork, giving them like a tool to like know how to shift up or down through their breathing strategies.
Well, look, a good place to start would probably be, you mentioned at the start that like Lino and I have tried to make a system around this thing, right? And we have with the breathe room and how we're rolling this out. And there's 3 phases of learning: activate, regulate, and release. And think of it like a pyramid. The base is activate, and that's where we cover physiology, safety, psychophysiology. In the middle is regulate. There we cover nervous system regulation, mental strength, and a flow state. And the top of the pyramid, that's released. There we talk about energetics, semantics, human behavior, and these other more esoteric outside of science type things. But that is just the tiny little bit at the top.
Which I feel like most breathwork practitioners have your triangle flipped around. They got
100%.
The beads.
They have the beads, they have the
They're
Wim Hof, the journeys, the trauma, the screaming, the crying, the pushing absolute limits of human experience and putting that under the guise of healing and growth. When, let's be frank, you're just getting high on breathing and it either goes positively or negatively. You sometimes get to dictate that, often you don't. And then when you do that, it's really important who you are around when doing that, okay? And that's why the release stuff, which is again akin to Wim Hof and conscious connected breathing, it's the smallest part, it's the last thing you learn, and we put really strict boundaries on the duration of time that you do things like that for. And that's because time and a place, micro doses at the right time are probably way better than doing it terribly and then going on a big macro dose. And if you can learn and understand how to use breathing and breath work and different breathing exercises to do those three things to your nervous system, activate your energy, regulate and balance it, or release a bit of steam and relax. That's the three things we want to teach you how to do. And when we do that, we want to give you multiple ways of doing each, because breathing can become monotonous and you can do Wim Hof every day for 3 years, but eventually you don't want to do Wim Hof anymore. So within our course, there's 9 different techniques. And then once you understand how they all work and how they work for you, you can start and mix them together. You can do, 5 minutes of an activation technique, and then you might do 5 minutes of a regulation techniques, and then go, cool, there's my 10 minutes of breathing, a double dose of the minimal effective needed. I'm going to now go, because I've come up a little bit, balanced myself out. Now I'm going to do my training session, go back to work after my break. And by being able to teach people these skills and tools, it allows them to then mix and match and make it their own once they understand. So that's kind of the goal with what we're doing, and the system we've created is that we'll show you how to speed up the car, slow the car down, and then put the car on a little erg and spin the wheels while it's sitting still to get some of that pent up energy out in a safe and effective way.
Yeah, the right tool for the right job, right?
I was literally about to say that. I hope that you were able to sort of visualize that he was talking about a system as opposed to breathwork techniques as such, and understanding the gear system of being able to turn it up and then turning it down. But the activate, regulate, and release, it's systemized in that way, and the techniques are inside those different levels.
Yeah. It's so funny, the parallels between that and training. You think of, a large percentage of the audience that they love endurance sport or that, some athletic pursuit, and you wouldn't go into your training and sprint every day or do the high end stuff that will just kind of completely toast you musculoskeletally with the nervous system, endocrine system, chemicals, all of the above. So it makes perfect sense that the breathing system would be the same thing. There's the base of the foundation or the pyramid, that you probably spend more time on perfecting, practicing, lower intensity, therefore frequency and volume can be a little higher. As you come up to more towards the pointy end, it's probably more intense, if we want to use that word.
It's a different kind of intensity, because believe it or not, the activate stuff is pretty hard and fast too, and it's actually quite short, because the activation techniques are around apnea. So using appropriate breath holding, that'll definitely turn your system.
I want to dive deeper on that as well, because I feel like for our population group, when you start talking about hypoxic environments and the adaptations that come with hypoxia, altitude training, that's a big thing around performance and stimulating. So don't let me derail you. Keep going on your thought, but I do want to unpack that a little.
Definitely can. And so that's why the activate stuff, we cover safety and physiology and the physical building blocks, because that's what's really important. And the techniques are fast and short and sharp with brief breath retentions. And what we're doing there is we're taking our respiratory rate through the roof. So up to upwards of 150 breaths a minute in these yogic style pulsing breaths.
Just we're chatting right now, what would we be at rest?
At rest, or it depends on the person, right? Goals would be around like that 10 to 15. It means you're quite a calm person. A lot of people work around upwards of 20 breaths a minute.
Okay.
But
If there was a 5 to 15x, our normal breathing.
Correct, right? And we come really high up in our respiratory rate and we like shake the snow globe of our nervous system, then we drop into brief retentions. So it's pretty much, it's shaking the snow globe of your nervous system to like turn it on, right? So we go way above baseline, then we stop. And then we go way above baseline, then we stop. And it's kind of like this car revving and slowing down, and that you'll never be breathing faster than that in whatever you do after it. So it's like we're breathing faster than we're about to, as well as not breathing at all, which is hopefully not happening when you're exercising. So we've covered the top and the tail, and then what you do in your session, you'll be somewhere in between that gap. So that's why we use the activation style techniques and apneas and these pulsing breaths to, lack of a better word, turn the system on. The regulation is where it gets more into like box breaths, triangle breaths, the physiological sigh, appropriate cadences, right? And that then you're getting down to like, you know, maybe depending on your cadence, 3 to 5 breaths a minute, right? And then jumping into the release stuff, which is the conscious connected kind of styles of breath work. We've got 3 of those. There you're taking around 25 to 30 breaths a minute, but they're way bigger breaths than the pulsing activations, because those activation breaths that look and sound like, that's about 500 mils each way. When we're getting into our conscious connected breaths, it's like 3.5 liters each way. So that's why the maths is really involved. We've got some funny jokes about maths and breathing, but it is mathematical. That's kind of the difference across those 3, is there's cadence changes, volume changes, and then it depends again, what are we trying to achieve? What state do we want to get into? Where are we now? Where do you want to be? How do we bridge that gap in the most effective way possible with the right investment of time? Breathing can't always be a 1-hour journey, and it can't always be a 5-minute sprint. It needs to be varied and based on where you are now and where you want to be.
How do we then, like, let's say you've got a athlete, client, person in front of you, for the practitioner who's like, how do I even like know where to start? How do I assess it? Like, where do I know where to start? How do I know what like, do they need the crazy, well, not the crazy, but the more intense Wim Hof style, or do we need to down-regulate? What's a good assessment, or some assessments we can get some baseline with?
You think your specificity is super important?
Yeah. So it depends what they're coming to you for. But again, it circles back to what Lino said. We're just going to put you on an echo, on an erg, and I want you to sit on there for 5 minutes and just breathe through your nose and just sit at a comfortable wattage. That would be the first place I'd assess, because when you'd have a look at it, they end up coming way down on their power output, and you go, okay, cool, that's where we're at, all right? We can also do lung diameter differences and see if their ribs are actually restricted. We can look at some physical measurements, or we can just put them kind of in situ and give them a very basic challenge, tape their mouth shut maybe, put them on an erg. That's when you can start to see what happens, because then there's observational stuff you can do where you look and go, okay, their chest is heaving, they're really actively breathing in, and there's no conscious effort on exhaling. Breathe like that for long enough, you fall out of your chair, right? Try to do that while you're running and you wonder why you get lightheaded and you can't keep your cadence up and you're getting like, dysregulated. So observation is probably the simplest place to start. And then what kind of challenge or stress or how you gamify it for your client is up to you. And that's kind of what's so good in the course with the level 1 anyway, is we don't jump deep into assessments there. We just run through the basics. And we've got a level 2 coming out in the future that covers more assessments and high performance. And that's where we get into the real nitty gritty of it. Because
can you give us a little sneak peek of what some of the assessments might be? Because I know a lot of people who listen are practitioners, and they'll have people injury rehab, or an athlete. There's a lot of coaches in this space. So like, if you're happy to, And of course you don't have
Yeah.
to, but like what just like a good objective assessment someone could do for an athlete?
Objective assessments are like lung diameter difference, like what we recorded when you came to combat a few years ago, and I sent you off the face of the earth accidentally. It's on YouTube.
That was
It's
a
quite
great
funny.
experience.
It's
We'll drop a link to that one as well.
It's quite funny when you see Hugh lose his mind a little bit, and like you wouldn't know from looking from the outside how lost you were in that moment.
Oh no, I was very lost.
That was the golden ratio progressive extending thing. That's hard. That's very, very hard. It's a weird kind of hard too.
That was a very clear insight into the effect that rising or lowering CO2 levels in the blood can do to an already stressed out nervous system.
Especially slowly. It's different when it's slow. So we've got lung diameter difference, retention capacity, like your low volume retention walking capacity in regards to steps or meterage, time at a certain cadence. You can use the balloons that we kind of like used before for exhale volume, but they're a little bit tricky sometimes, and you can mess it up when you put it in your mouth and stuff. But
so when you say retention, like a breath hold and then see how far you can.
Yeah, see how far. So take a breath. You can do high and low volume retention, so you can hold your breath after an inhale, hold your breath after an exhale, and then you can record steps or meterage based on that until you have to breathe. You can use swallowing as like a pre-measure. So sometimes I know in the Art of Breath course, if you swallowed, it was a negative, like it restarted the test. Whereas what I'll ask people sometimes is, if you swallow, just keep going, but let me know. Guy, I swallowed.
Frame that as like involuntary contraction of your breathing apparatus. Right?
Correct. And being able to control involuntary things, so that's pretty hard. It takes practice and awareness, and that's why I use nose clips too, because sometimes you'll be doing a retention walk and you've just taken a breath not knowing, or you're sipping the air in while you're walking thinking you're still in the breath hold. Because there's a lot of awareness that we talk through in like oral facial posture and your throat and that seal of your airway, that if you're new to this, it's a lot. It's really deeply complicated. And if you remember like the homunculus man, Google that, by the way, if you don't know what that is.
I talk about this with people who have got chronic injuries all the time.
If you don't know what the homunculus man is, Google it. It looks really weird, but
Picasso artwork.
Yeah. If you look at the size of the homunculus man's neck and torso, it's like the thinnest part on him. And when it comes to breathing, our awareness, it all has to be visualized because it's all internal and it's all here, which is, again, very low sensory input from our nervous system. Doesn't mean we can't grow our sensory awareness and our nervous system input to those areas. It just means it's complicated. And if you come into it, expectations versus reality really dictate outcomes. So if you come into any kind of breathing exercise or assessment or training and you come into it with, I breathe every day, this is easy as shit, what are you really going to teach me? And you walk away feeling like you know absolutely nothing and you can't breathe at all, there's a real big gap between expectation and reality. And that can really send some people into a negative spiral. It can motivate some to get, better, but that disconnect between expectation and reality can really play different tricks on different people. And that's why, fortunately, as an exercise physiologist who does nervous system regulation as a specialty, I get lots of mental health referrals from doctors, particularly in Lennox Head, in our Lennox clinic, and they have no idea what they're coming in for. They have no expectations, and it's a blessing and a curse. But I'm definitely leaning towards the blessing side of it now, because no expectations is sometimes brilliant, because you're a blank slate, you're a clean bit of paper, and we can start to paint what we want to paint that way. So yeah, be mindful if ever you try to go and do some breathwork stuff. Go into it open-minded and with just low expectations and there to learn, because you might be deeply humbled.
Yeah. No, I've definitely experienced the humbling nature of breathwork. If I just we were talking about like lung, expansion, kind of, I'm assuming tape around the ribs, kind of looking.
Full breath in, tape around the ribs, measure that distance. Full breath out, measure that different distance or that diameter, and then calculate the difference between those two diameters. That's going to give us our lung diameter difference. And then once you find maybe how small it is, yours was from memory really good. It was like north of 11 centimeters of difference.
Decade of swimming there for you.
It's brilliant. It was really, really good, right? But we tested the lung diameter difference for a cohort of the Empowered Man retreat. And some guys were going from 3 centimeters on day 1 to 11 centimeters on day 3.
And is there a number, or is it just you're looking for change in that individual?
Everyone's different, right? Because everyone's got different ribs, everyone's got different torsos and body awareness, and it's actually more what you can get out than what you can get in.
Like you said, everyone's got a different life as well. So like they're all coming for different reasons.
Yeah.
You know,
Very
so
different
like
reasons.
the results that they experience, and I guess like any practitioner that's starting out, like start small, because like you can just keep on going deep and deep and deep with this stuff. But like over the course of like 4 days, they were able to have that difference, and it wasn't that we were focusing on breathing that whole time. Like we're just focusing on their lives, and they were able to. And I guess that just goes to highlight how much your life plays a role in how you breathe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the body keeps score, as they say. So I imagine, coming to an experience like that, the type of person who would do that is probably already, bearing a lot in their life, like in terms of probably achievement orientated, wearing stress or carrying stress well, so to speak, which then, probably binds up a rib cage and a nervous system. So the ability to go deep on some of the emotional stuff in an intensive environment, 4 days of kind of unpacking some of that, I imagine some of the release just comes from probably the nervous system literally letting go. And I've heard you say in the past, like the power of the exhale.
Everything.
And it's all in the exhale. So, and I find that, I work with athletes in pain, coming with an injury typically. And so talking about, you mentioned the homunculus, but like this nervous system fixating on injuries, parts of the body that may be dysfunctional, and then giving them the tools to maybe down-regulate a system, build a more healthy nervous system.
Good.
You can quite literally see the change in posture and position. I'll see what you think of this. I kind of have like the 4 Ps that I like to throw at an athlete for breathing. It's like, for psychology, so a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, physiology, quite literally the biochemical changes that you're talking about, posture or position, which is, biomechanics. You take an exhale and try your arms over your head. You think about the dynamics of a shoulder with the 4 joints, that scapulothoracic impact on posture. And then the last one, performance. Like if you've got all these 3 going in a good direction, those 3 initial Ps leading to the 4th P of performance, I like to frame it like that. You guys have obviously done a much better and more comprehensive
awesome.
job.
No,
That's
I was about to say that was pretty good.
That's brilliant. I can't argue. Like that is, I think the 4th P comes if the first 3 are in the right situation.
And it sounds like, and if I'm understanding correctly, like you guys are teaching at like this first course is build the awareness, build the basics, build the kind of like, all right, we've got them aware. We're teaching them how to do it safely, how to do it effectively. And the level 2 coming soon potentially goes a little deeper for someone who maybe has a bit more experience. They've done the level 1. They know how to use the right tool for the right job when it's a chill the system out versus let's pump the accelerator and get things going. I know I mentioned apnea earlier. If you're happy to kind of dive a little deeper on that, and I want to throw it to Lino first around like the head noise that comes with that, because I said at the start, the science and the soul, and I feel like that is your specialty, going deep with people to understand and unpack that. I'm thinking of a few athletes currently that, their head noise is what stops them from performing. They're some of the best in the world on paper, but like what happens in the mind, it's just like, it essentially destroys their performance. So how does breathwork help with this? And what are some things to be mindful of?
I say if you can breathe through it, you can get through it. Right, like our breath like influences every physiological function inside the body at a cellular level. So like when I roll with Butchies, right, now I'm a beginner. He's clearly much more advanced than I am, being a black
They're talking
belt.
about jiu-jitsu, they're not gang members.
Jiu-jitsu, being more experienced than what I am. So for me, the alarm bells come on pretty quick. But I want to learn, so I'm not going to use my strength or my size to try, because I'm like, man, I want to learn something here. So I'm just purely focusing on my breath. Even this morning, after being sick for the last few months, this morning was the first time I went to a class, and I'm just like, you're rusty. I'm just like, just breathe. As long as you can breathe through it, you can get through it. Because the way that we breathe influences the way that we think, which influences the way that we feel as well. And it doesn't matter if you're a professional athlete. I've got professional athletes reaching out to me. People ask me, why do they reach out to you? I'm like, they obviously see something about what I do. And a lot of those guys, probably the number one thing that most people will struggle with, I find, the common theme is over time and time again, is relationships, right? Over and over again, especially for men, right? There really are two things that we focus on. It's our family or work. Because if we're not at work, we're with our families. If we're not with our families, we're at work. And if we're struggling, in one of those two areas, right, that's where our head's going to be. So put us into a health and fitness environment or into a sports, performance environment, the mind's going to go a million different places. We're talking about sports psychology on the way here, and like right now, the world championships are going on, at this moment. And I was just sort of saying,
athletics.
Yeah. Do or die moments in those, right? It's like milliseconds.
One of the female runners yesterday, you were talking about pushing before, and she put an elbow up and she dropped. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Jess Holler, is it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And then she had to, regather herself, and I was watching her breathing, right? So I was at the gym this morning and watching how they were breathing. I'm always watching how people are breathing. And the first thing that's going on for me is I'm thinking to myself, what's actually going through their minds? What's going through their heads? Where are their heads at? What are they thinking about? What's going on inside their lives that's influencing them the way they're breathing? Most people just aren't even thinking at all. And then some people think about everything.
We all know people on either end of that spectrum.
Yeah. People live on either end of that spectrum, though. That's like literally where they hang out. They're either completely unconscious or too conscious, because the self-esteem movement's wonderful. You've got to believe in yourself. However, self-conscious thoughts are exactly the same as any negative emotion. So the minute you become self-conscious, you become in a negative mindset, because coming back to the flow state and performance, you can't be thinking about yourself and all these things, or your family life, or what's going on. If your head's not in the game, you're not going to be performing at your best. And then the breath can kick you out there, or the breath can keep you out there. And that's probably why we observe it so much and we make such an emphasis on it, is because I don't know anything that can shift your state faster than the right application of breathing or not breathing, because it's faster than drugs. It acts like drugs. And there's something I say to people all the time when I'm introducing what is an exercise physiologist. That is, I go, everyone else's health field comes into our field. Because if you're a doctor and you prescribe medication, that medication either turns up, turns down, or turns off a physiological process that is already happening. Outside of antibiotics, nothing else treats the problem. It treats a symptom by manipulating your physiology. Surgeons cut into your physiology. Psychologists use concepts and understanding to try to help you understand the physiology of stress, anxiety, depression, a 3-letter acronym illness that you may or may not have. They all come into our field, but they look at us like we're the plebs, because we're like the lowest on the Medicare benefit scheme of rebates. So they go, oh, you're just an exercise physiologist, like a glorified personal trainer. And I'm thinking to myself, absolutely not. Like, we just stayed on physiology. You went off and learned a bunch of other things that impact physiology. Got asked the question at the start, like, why didn't you go and study anything else? And we both had a very similar thing where we came to the conclusion that with what we know and how we can work, we can help pretty much anyone that sits in front of us with a problem. We don't need any further credentials or letters next to our name or positions of prestige. We can help whoever sits in front of us if they listen, and we can find the right approach forward. Because at the end of the day, physiology is everything, and anything else that you do outside of what we work on will eventually come back to roost in your physiology, in your nervous system. So we just realized this early on and ran with it, and never let that impact our belief in what we can do and how we can help people. We didn't need any more external validation. We were like, hey, this is pretty cool. Let's just refine our craft and help our audiences or our clients, patients, athletes, whatever you want to call it. You went down the path you went down. I fell into veterans and first responders just from jobs and getting poked under NDAs and things like that. But I always kept practicing the performance side of things for me so I could be better on the mats. And I guess for you, you had the performance side of things, but the mental health stuff you had to work on for yourself because you've got 3 kids, you're a good family man, you hold yourself to a high degree of performance, and that comes with expectations, pressure, and stress. So you were practicing the mental health stuff for you and obviously applying the performance. I was practicing and applying the mental health stuff and doing the performance. So it's like we had this different little thing, and whenever we catch up and meet in the middle, we just have a good time.
And it's so funny, like they're not different things.
They're exactly the same.
And they may exist on, a dysfunctional system is still the same system. And dysfunction and performance are probably when you push one thing to either end of that scale. But then you're talking about coming back to the middle, and being in the middle of that allows you to probably dance each way. But if you're only pushing the limiter all the way up the top, you can only come back down.
Exactly.
I guess the positive for the people who are completely dysfunctional, given the right circumstances, can start to edge back towards the middle or their level of performance as well.
We were having a conversation last week around my nephew just won their grand final and he's made a few rep sides, and my siblings were talking about, he'll make it, right? And we all know people that have a lot of potential to be able to make it in professional sports as professional athletes. And I was talking to Alex about being able to put something together. When you're young, think about your young athletes, or even when you guys were young athletes, you haven't developed that resilience yet, right? So the head noise that goes on is pretty loud, right? And I was like, if we could create something for them to be able to cultivate that, to build that resilience, to build that mental strength. And I know a lot of people are looking to get away from the stress to try and find the calm. And I'm like, I don't want you to go find the calm. I actually want you to stay under pressure, right? Learning how to perform under pressure. I think that's what we actually want people to do, right? Because if you go to the calm, fantastic. Now you just know how to be calm.
Yeah, it's easy to meditate when you're sitting in the forest.
Yeah,
no
right?
distractions.
It's easy to be cool when everything's all good, right? And when you're peaceful and you're zen. But when you're playing sport, right, like it's out there in the field, it's out there in the arena, right? When the crowd is there, when you're performing, and depending on what level you're at, right, the pressure only gets higher. So I feel your ability to perform under pressure, to stay and withstand the fire, right, can keep you in the fight. And I think that's where we really want to actually have people doing. I've been talking more and more about heart rate variability. It's like we want the up and we want the down. We don't want you living up here. We don't want you living down here. You're very rarely ever going to be living in the middle here. So having a great dance between the top and the bottom, like
stress time curve, your favorite asset.
Yeah, learning that skill. I love models. Absolutely love models because
As a visual learner,
everyone understands what pictures are, right? They articulate things really beautifully for us. But performance under pressure, I think, has been a topic that's been on my mind over the last week.
And when you can get it right, that's when some really special stuff happens.
I think it builds character. I don't think it only builds character. I think it allows all the colors of you to come out. You think about your most favorite athletes.
They thrive under pressure. They're the ones that you want to give the ball to when the game's on the line.
And you think about their personalities.
Yeah, it's like that seem to have like that anti-fragile system. They get better in the face of adversity. They're not robust. They actually improve when they face hard
I think
stuff.
that's a great word, robust. We want people to have robust nervous systems.
Yeah, which is not seeking calm. And it's like, to me, it's not so much calm, it's composure. It's this performance. And to perform, you need to be composed. And when your breath is compromised, it's insane how much your body will sacrifice everything else to get it back. Easiest one is if you lose your breath, the only thing you're thinking about is getting your breath back, right? It's a complete monofocus. And then when I was researching stuff for the course, I learned that once your respiration is compromised, your body will start shunting blood away from locomotor muscles to your respiratory muscles. So it's like if you're running and you're gassed and you've lost your breath, your body's taking blood from your legs and putting it up into your respiratory system.
Yeah, endurance athletes, listen up.
Yeah, so like when I heard that, I was like, man, that's wild. And I don't think people understand our body's ability to shunt blood around. Like, no wonder your legs feel heavy. It's not because there's too much blood in them. It's because there's not enough blood in them, because that blood's gone up into your torso because your body's gone, everyone on the respiratory boat, this needs to be corrected ASAP Rocky. And then it does that.
Yeah, there's some pretty intrinsic primitive systems tied to breathing. Obviously, if we don't have it for too long, it's game over for us.
It is like the thing that we need the most. And it's one of those things where you might be an elite endurance athlete and you've never thought about doing any breath training at all, and you might think you don't need to. And I'm just,
it's the
blows my mind.
Right, so yeah, I deal a lot with those people. Brad does. Like, it does blow my mind the amount of times I'm like, how much, you're in endurance sport, quite literally, how effectively you can transport and utilize oxygen. And obviously the waste products of that, but like, no one does anything around it. So like, if I am the endurance athlete at home, LSD, nasal breathing, what are some maybe like one or two other things that they could put together in part of their like, I'm going to start doing breath work. You boys have convinced me.
I think apnea works.
Yeah, I was going to say, apnea is the next step.
Let's talk about head noise on apnea as well.
I think like something as simple as taking somebody's breath away, right? Like, where does your head go then? The alarm bells go on for everyone. I think most people think about breathing, they're thinking about like the inhale and the exhale, but never really thinking about how do I function when my breath is gone.
Usually not very well, right?
No, yeah. So I think if you can like practice all the areas of a breath, your inhales, your exhales, when you choose to breathe, hold your breath or stop breathing at all, I think you're able to get greater capacity out of it.
The head noise component of that, obviously not having your breath, we just talked about how quickly that can ring the alarm bells for some people. I actually have, I don't know if I call it a game, but things I do with some athletes I train a fair bit, and I know they can tolerate it. And actually some guys who've done some Everest kind of hiking where they're going to be in pretty low oxygen environments, doing what you talk about on the, I can't remember exactly what you called it, but breath hold, see how many steps you can take, use that as a bit of a baseline, and then do up to about 8 to 10 rounds of trying to just push that a little further, doing that for like a 5 to 6 week block. And you'll be able to talk to this probably at more depth than me, but like the natural rebound you get in EPO from the spleen, I think releasing some like,
it's immediate. Yeah.
Yeah, you get that kind of boost in the oxygen carrying
red blood cells.
Of the blood, right? So, but also when I do it, most of my athletes are much better athletes than I am, but playing with their mind, even just the speed at which I walk next to them, just to like start to walk quicker than them,
throws them off immensely.
I've started breathing a while ago. They're still not breathing. Just starting to throw the comment at them as well, get in their head a little bit. Because I know the head noise is already going. And so I feel like, and getting back to do you say your nephew?
Yes, yeah.
I think people have gotten too soft today in terms of how much they push that. It was at one point in time, it was all that coaches did. They tried to break people physically, mentally. Thankfully, sports science has got a little smarter and they're a little more protective of how they push and train people, but potentially it's gone too far in the other direction. I was speaking to Alex about this the other day, and now to the point where they don't push people to that point where they want to quit.
Yeah.
And so the first time they ever face it is probably in a hard game, and that's when the performance fails, because everyone around them are yes men. They're telling them how good they are. They're being told, yeah, you're great. There's no real adversity on their training. And so by the time they get to a big race or something where the pressure is real, they fold.
Yeah. We're having this conversation about Gatka, and one of Australia's sprints coaches talking about how they possibly didn't prepare him well enough for it. And when I was watching his interviews and just watching his physiology and the way that he was responding, and I was like, he was excited to be there. You could definitely tell that. But there's so much hype that's got behind it.
He had a lot of pressure on him, and he's
right
at 17.
Yeah. So like I'm always thinking about like all the data and then watching what's happening in real time. Like how are they talking? How's their body language? What is their face telling me, right? And I sort of felt like, everyone it's crazy. I reckon everyone thought that he's just got to go and win, right? Because Australia really loves to get behind the underdog, and we also like to win as well, But he's 17. What they said was that when he went to one of the world meets, the most recent ones, he competed at like the under 23s. They just went back to school, and they went to the world champs, right? Like, I don't think they really prepared him, for that. So I think preparation, and I was going to say before, was coming to mind around the psychology behind it. I'm glad that was the first thing you said before. Within inside of the course, we talk about values and beliefs, right? Because these things play a massive role in how we choose to do anything.
It's weird because you're talking about flow state in the daily mundane. If you're passionate about what you're doing, like I get this all the time. I'm fucking fired up on a Monday morning to go to work because I love what I do.
Yeah.
Some people might not have that same experience, but I can, because I'm helping people, genuinely love doing that. So the passion that comes with that, I'm in flow state most of the day.
Yeah.
So the psychology piece is massive.
I think as a coach, it's up to you to be able to find that inside your athletes or your clients, right? Like what matters the most to them. And like we can be teaching breathing as much as we want, but if we're not having those conversations and we're trying to work out what's missing, what's going on here, because they're doing all the right things, there's not much more I can tweak here, right? And we don't realize that there's some other factors that go on inside their life that are completely out of alignment to this.
The intangibles and stuff. And coming back to what you said as well about like the resilience, how back in the day, like PTs and S&C coaches would brag and value themselves based on, how many guys threw up in preseason and things like that, which again, that done the wrong way is stupid, but the overcorrection is equally as dumb. And if you can guarantee people will do anything, it is overcorrect. And especially when there's emotion and feelings involved, that's just guaranteed for this like pendulum to swing back and forth. And we were talking before, Lino's personal nervous system journey is coming back to this middle. And like you said perfectly, if you're in the middle, you can go left or right. If you're pinned to the wall on the right, you can only go left. And that's a problem, right? So getting people back into the middle and then making sure they know what it feels like for the pendulum to swing all the way this way and swing all the way that way, and then heart rate variability, flip it around. That's what we're talking about. We've got a stress time scale that I created as part of the course, and Lino uses it in education all the time. And it's about being able to ride the waves of our heart rate and our nervous system. We need to be comfortable in those big waves. We have to be comfortable in flat surf, right? But flat seas never made for good sailors. And if you only ever go out in giant surf, you're probably not going to be any good either, right? So balance is the middle through line of everything we do. It's what I did with AB physiology, was the art of balancing your physiology, because that's where the magic lies, because then you can zig and zag. And in a world today where everything just gets more extreme and more pushed towards the edges and the fringes, there's not a lot of want just yet for the middle, but it's coming back because people are getting pretty fed up with that chaos.
That's what I was going to say. No one wants to be in the middle because there's nothing sexy about it.
Nothing at all.
It's boring.
Nothing sexy
right?
with the basics.
But if you get it, you understand why it's actually so sexy, right? Because it packs so much more, it gives you so much more bang for your buck. But nobody wants to do it because like having the big cathartic release like feels really exciting, and activating things like makes you feel really good and go after it. But you want more bang for your buck. Like the nervous system regulation stuff, the stuff that's got to give you the most value. It's just super boring.
But then you can build the consistency, and consistency over time is what gets the job done anyway.
And the minimal effective dose of breathwork is 5 minutes a day. That's it. Minimal effective is 5. So you do a 10-minute breathwork session, you've double dosed yourself for today. Congratulations, right? And do that for 6 weeks. Your nervous system's ability to tolerate stress will be measurably improved through your heart rate variability. Because coming back to, we touched on like gears and a thing like that. And look, cars were always used as an analogy for people for the longest time. And, people can get angry about how we're not really cars. We're more like Teslas, because the computer's so integrated into every little thing. But most people drive around in this physical vessel and have no idea where the brakes are. And then because of the way the world is, it feels like someone's got their foot on your foot on the accelerator. And you're just crashing into shit everywhere you go. And of course you are. You don't know where the brakes are. Like, we grew up where in the time of paddock bashes. So old beat up cars that are unregisterable, and you're in a field with your friends. And that's where a lot of us might have learnt to drive or driven for the first time. And I have lots of teenage kids with, ADHD, dysregulated nervous system type problems. And I explain to them like, hey, look, it's not your fault you were born into this fucking crazy world, but it is absolutely your responsibility to find a way to navigate it. Now, you've been put into this car of yours with the wildest accelerator possible, which is you have the world in your pocket. Let's learn where the brakes are. Here's our handbrake. Here's our foot brake. Let's just learn how to apply that, because then you can start to ride those waves of your nervous system. When your phone or your life is sending you up the hill, you can apply something quickly, feel an immediate change, and come just down 2 points, because the mental clarity at a 7 out of 10 compared to a 9 out of 10 in terms of nervous system activation or elevation or fight or flight, 2 points, so much more clarity.
And I know you said you weren't protocol based, but if you can just throw out like maybe 2 or 3 protocols that would do that exactly for the individual who is overwhelmed, and then potentially, because if I hear you correctly, we're trying to shift down a bit at the end of like a session for an athlete. Would you mind sharing like one each there, a protocol you really
Let's
love?
get to the protocols. I'll say a few things. Like, for those that are listening, you definitely want to practice breath, right? Our ability to feel it requires a bit of experience. And I felt like I just wanted to share that, because like, we're doing a podcast about breathing. And it's like, how could it really be as effective? And for us, it's like normal. This is like what we do every single day of the week. But for those that this isn't actually a part of your life, like a bit of practice over time and being able to see, giving some time to see the results and the shifts that it actually makes in your life, like super, super important.
Correct. But I always say, like, you practice it when you don't need it if you ever want it to work when you do. Now, in terms of protocols, I love 5s because you can count them on your hand and you always forget what you're up to with breathing because you get distracted. And, music is often a really important role when I'm doing any kind of breath work for others or myself. I always play tunes, and it's not like meditation tunes either. I breathe mostly to hip hop, a lot of Wu-Tang lately. But one of the simplest things you can apply in a simple protocol is 5 physiological sighs,
Which are?
I'll explain in a second. 5 nose in, mouth out, and then 5 LSD through your nose. So it's 15 breaths. How long it takes is dependent. Now, the physiological sigh is Huberman's favorite breathwork technique, and shout out to Daddy Huberman. But at the same time, how he teaches it and explains it is very quick and often can sometimes send people a bit off the rails instead of slow them down. How I try to teach people the physiological sigh is we take a sip for the first breath, and then we fill up our lungs with the second breath. And that's kind of like pulling the slingshot back extra far to then let go and be patient on the exhale. Now, why this works so well is that first little sip of air opens up the main roads in our lungs. And then that second breath that we use to, quote, fill all the way up has this little extra expansion to pop those last few little grapes open in our lungs. And it's all about building you up to free fall on the exhale. And most people who are stressed, who are anxious, who are unconsciously breathing, their exhale's always cut short. They're trying to get to the next breath. And if you think about mindsets of people you work with, they're the same people who are not present with what they're doing. They're thinking about the next thing. If they're at work, they want to be at home. If they're at home, they want to be at training. If they're at training, they want to be at home. And it's just like they're never where they need to be. They're always one step ahead, and we break it down into the micro. They're always trying to get to their next breath in before they've let the breath out finish. So We can actually run through those little 5s if you want to finish the podcast at the end. I'll run through the 5 size, the 5 nose mouth, and the 5 LSD nasal so you can follow along and finish the podcast on a real calm kind of zen space.
Let's do that. One little thing I know you've given me when we've done that in the past, and I've stolen it, and when I give that thing to people,
take it all.
Relax the face, relax the shoulders before the exhale, because every breath, even when I do it, I know I'm like still holding a bit of tension, and it gets to your point of actually being mindful on the exhale process.
Yeah. It's like you gotta let go of the tension, then let go of the breath, because when we take a big full breath in, all these tertiary, so third line respiratory muscles activate, and that's okay. But sometimes we're not so good at relaxing muscles. Everyone thinks about activation. I got to learn to activate my glutes and activate my whatever. It's also really important to be able to relax certain muscle groups and things like that. And that's why whenever we get to the top in a relaxation type focus, dropping the physical tension before you drop the breath, and like literally drop it, because 80% of your exhale is passive. But to be passive, you have to kind of get out of the way, which is why like the slingshot analogy here works, because if you do all this work to pull it back, and then instead of letting go, you go, as opposed to, I can go, and I often see it, unfortunately, in women. They're hyper-controlled. They don't want to let go of that breath. They try to control too much instead of appreciating and enjoying the release of what the exhale is supposed to be.
All right, so protocol 5's good one for people to do. Sounds like 5 minutes worth to round out the 5s.
About that, I reckon.
That sounds like a pretty easy one for people to so it sounds like awareness, build awareness.
Yeah.
LSD throughout the day. Are we nasal breathing? These seems like things people can just start ticking off to build what I believe is a superpower, and is one of the only skills that really matters because it governs every other skill. Then this is hard, but we have this tradition, and I want to get both of your opinion. Lynn, I'll throw it to you first. If you could condense everything you've learned down into about breathwork now into just one message or one overarching point, mate, what would it be?
If you can master your breath, you can master your life.
Boom. Mic drop. Again, for the listeners at home.
If you can master your breath, you can master your life.
That's epic.
Well, I was running this morning, and I was just so easily just wanted to open my mouth. And then I opened my mouth, and I was like, you just made that harder. Then the second made it easier. Because we always want to take the easy route, right? Be able to overcome that. Yeah, I think if you can control your breathing, if you can master this thing, this is a lifelong relationship between you, your body, and your breath. I think you'll be able to influence your life in the direction you actually want to take it.
Look, if I could condense everything that I've learned about breathing into one kind of concept, it would be seek balance, not perfection with your breath. There is no perfect ratio. There's no perfect this and that, breath hold. There's nothing perfect about what we do. We can strive for perfection, and that would be, to me, striving to be the most well-balanced version of yourself. A well-balanced individual can go fast, they can go slow, but they can, more than anything, find their way back to center. And breathing is the fastest way to shift your state into some kind of balance, because then it's the thing you want to do before you take your next step. Because actions and steps taken in panic and anger or sadness aren't always our best steps. And then if we are heightened or low, we can sometimes take these steps and not see the alternate path. Like the analogy I use to people with stress-based mental health struggles is that if our nervous system is flying, we miss all the exits to get off the highway because it's too late. it's gone. And you're like, shit, how do I get back there again, right? But if we can slow down a little bit, we can see those exit ramps coming up and we can take a different path, because I'm sure for a lot of people, it can feel like you're stuck in this never-ending loop at the moment. There's some catastrophe on your phone. There's some chaos going on. Everything's getting worse. And it's just, you can feel like you're on this treadmill that's just sending you into the meat grinder, right? But you can put your phone down. You can go for a walk and breathe light, soft, deeply through your nose. You might start to smell, springs in the air. You might notice the brighter colors. It might feel like you're even doing drugs and you're just breathing through your nose slowly, because if you've been living at a heightened state for so long, it can almost feel like you've done drugs when you slow your breathing down and make it light, soft and deep and be out in nature. And it's just balance to me, man. Every path I've gone down with people, no matter how complex their problems are, we land at this balancing point, and the breath is the universal balancing act.
I like that. It's a hard act to follow, but that was solid. But we also have another bit of a tradition, and I feel like it was probably in what you said there, but challenge for the listener. So across the next week, if they were to kind of take what you boys have done, I want you to elicit like a physical challenge around anything you want really, but for them to incorporate into their life.
Is like the fewer breaths. So like working with my clients about actually learning to take less breaths, bringing it down to like 4 to 6 breaths per minute. So one I did with my wife, she had our son earlier this year, February, and just before, maybe like January.
Shout out.
So yeah,
that's
to my wife.
Congrats.
I delivered him myself. Alex is actually the godfather. But 7 breaths, a 7 second inhale, 7-second exhale over 7 minutes. That works out to be 4 breaths per minute.
Nice.
So over 7 minutes, you're only taking like 28. The key here is to exhale with a hum. So the inhale is for the length of 7, the exhale is the length of 7, and every exhale is, for those that like to chant, you can say Om, but for those that just want to hum, you can hum. But that compounding effect of that vibration at about the 7-minute mark, don't be surprised if you feel like you're in a trance and you've probably fallen off the face of the earth. 777.
I love it.
The physical challenge I'd give people is try to do your warm-up routine without opening your mouth. We're not going to change up what you're doing. You might have your little set movement sequence, or you might jump on the ergs. Whatever your warm-up is, try to do that one without opening your mouth. It'll bring that awareness through, nasal breathing, red hot tip, seal your lips, put your tongue on the roof of your mouth and relax your jaw. That's the nasal breathing mantra. Lips sealed, tongue set, teeth soft.
Boys, it's been an absolute pleasure today. The Breath Room Global, I believe. This is your chance. We've got the certification, which I'm really excited because you were a myth there for a while, brother. You went deep off radar.
Disappeared for a year.
Yeah,
written 2 textbooks in a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So this isn't just, because a lot of people out there take something that's quite nebulous and make it more mysterious. Whereas you guys have gone into the science, you've made it really practical. You're giving people the tools to smartly, systematically look at it with good models to actually be able to use it as part of their practice as a clinician, as an individual. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'll open it and then you close.
Can you talk about how it started though? I think where it came from, right? It came from being approached.
Yeah, well, it came from the concept I had was, if everyone had the skill set of breathwork, how would that change the world? That's where the idea came from, right? Understanding my love and my obsession of the breath. I'm like, everyone sort of needs this tool. But if we took this tool and we put it into a vehicle that it could be more accessible, and I'm like, the fitness industry is one of those things because the gym is acceptable by general public. So when I said to Alex, when we build this thing, we're building a system. We're building a system for this specific space. And what you and I do is we take breathwork and we build breathwork systems for industries. And breathwork TBR is for the fitness industry. But it seems to be spreading its way out. And the reason why we build systems for specific spaces and groups of people is because groups speak in different ways. the language that they respond to is different. So the tradies will respond to something different to the fitness industry, and the fitness industry definitely responds something different to the spiritual community, right? And I think that's why there is that separation. And you guys being from the area you're from, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These two people don't want to associate with each other. So let's build something for them, because they do need that skill set. Also, when we build it, let's build it based on a model. And the purpose of that is that we can sort of pull it apart and we can put it back together as well. This isn't a course that is linear. It isn't like start at the top, work your way down. The reason why it's got a model is because it's got a shape. It's got this 3D shape so that it helps not only with the learning, but also with the teaching as well. For you to be able to learn it for yourself is one thing, but for you to be able to teach it to someone else, that's something completely different. So that's why it's a system, it's a model, it's got structure to it in a way that it can be learned and adopted by absolutely everyone. And the question that just keeps on coming back to me, why TBR exists, is if everyone knew breathwork, if everyone could regulate their own nervous systems, how would that change the world? And then the textbook writer?
Well, we have this thing, right? Lino is like the chief visionary officer. Like he has the image, and then I'm his engineer or the design officer. So he has this, I've got this great idea. I'm like, cool. And then I have to work out the logistics of that situation. And the project initially started because we were approached by Lino was approached by Clean Health to make something for the PT space, so personal trainers. And then when I sat down and thought about it, I was thinking like, there are personal trainers that have the exact same double degrees that we do, and they're practicing as personal trainers. And there are personal trainers that dropped out of school in year 10 and just fell in love with being a PT. So if that's the demographic we're speaking to, we are speaking to everyone. So then when we made the course, the level 1, we made the certified breathwork coaching course. And then in the process of making that, we thought, you know what? We can take these executive masterclasses and create a whole just personal development course, which is called Master Your Breath. So we have a Master Your Breath course that has the same model, 9 executive summary lectures, the 9 techniques, some really simple quizzes to test your understanding, and that comes in at less than the cost of a psychology appointment. Then we have the certified breathwork coaching course. Now that has all the executive summaries, but it also has deep dive lectures, logbooks, case studies, more challenging assessments, and the certified breathwork coaching course probably qualifies you for the maximal available self-assessment PD points if you're a health professional. And the idea being that we wanted to have the coaching course available for the health pros and the PTs and people that need to get CPD points. But at the same time, if your clients and athletes can learn it for themselves in their own time, in their own comfort, and not at the same depth that we expect those teaching it to do, just learning it for yourself. That's how we ended up releasing, we're going to release 2 courses off the bat, the Master Your Breath personal development and the Certified Breathwork Coach Level 1 professional development, to get the ball rolling in the right direction by just establishing a language, a model, and a system that talks to the 80% in the middle, not the 10% who are very spiritual and connected and leaning into the more esoteric, or the 10% on the other side that are like the real science nerds, like the real deep dive. That's also a small sliver. We're trying to talk to the 80% in the middle who need it just as much as the edges. Just they sometimes are not going to be drawn to the same types of personalities and courses that run the either end of the kind of gamut of breathwork.
We'll link all that in the show notes as well, so people who are interested. So I believe you're starting a bit of a roadshow soon. So
yeah, tour starts soon. The course link will be in the description, and then keep an eye out on our socials and stuff. So if I come into a gym near you, the coolest thing is getting to feel it for yourself.
Man, it's so much more powerful. The breath for me, like I said, had exposure to it not until I've gone back to it and kind of reestablished and done it. Like, you need to experience it. But I 100% agree with that and can advocate for what you boys are doing. I'm really pumped to kind of dive deeper as well, and look forward to seeing how it all unfolds for you. But just from Brad and myself, big appreciation for jumping on the show today, and appreciate you both.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so if you are listening, pull the car over or stop driving. Do not be operating heavy machinery or near water. Make sure you're sitting up with good posture. Close your eyes. We'll take 3 normal breaths in the nose and out the mouth to prepare. Breathing in and out the mouth. Breathing in the nose, out the mouth. Last one like that. In the nose, out the mouth. Pausing after the exhale. Into our 5 physiological sighs. Take a sip in through the nose. Pause. Fill your lungs all the way up. Exhale out the mouth. Let it go. And be patient till the exhale ends. Take a sip in through the nose. Pause. Expand your lungs and fill all the way up. Let it fall out the mouth. Sip. Pause. Fill. Drop out the mouth. 2 more like that. Sip. Pause. Fill. Drop the tension, drop the breath. Last sigh. Sip. Pause. Fill. And fall. Slow, full breath in the nose now, no pause, filling from the bottom, through the sides, up to the top. Let the breath fall out your mouth. In through the nose, expanding from the bottom, through your side body, chest lifts last and least. Exhale and let it go. Just 3 more like that. Last breath out the mouth, breathing in the nose. Letting it fall out the mouth. Now for our last 5 breaths, nothing changes, just our lips stay sealed. Breathing in the nose. And letting it fall back out the nose. Breathing in the nose and out the nose. Keeping our lips sealed, our tongue set to the roof of our mouth, and our jaw relaxed. Lino's nose always whistles. We've not got to the bottom of it, but we persist through it. Wherever you are, taking your second last breath in. Being patient on the exhale out your nose, understanding it's going to just take a little bit longer. It's smaller pipes. Taking our last conscious breath of the 15 conscious breaths we've just taken. Slowly blink your eyes open, wriggle your fingers and toes. How you feel now is the outcome of just 15 conscious breaths, all with a little bit of a different focus.
Beautiful way to end it.
I can breathe now.
We all heard that, don't worry.
Yeah.